This girl is a famous streamer, broadcasting live in that innocent outfit. But as soon as she ended the stream, a fanatical follower broke into her house and attacked her. This creep had a twisted dream of being more than just a simple fan. Our protagonist was watching the stream at that exact moment and noticed someone's reflection in her window. Shugo didn't know her personally yet, but he was sure she was his in-game partner. He called the police and managed to get her address. As he rushed to the scene, he felt his game abilities getting even stronger in real life. So Shugo did something wild. He climbed the building without getting paid by Netflix and jumped right over the entire structure. The girl was in serious danger because this guy is a total lunatic. When the bedroom window shattered and Shugo suddenly appeared, she screamed for help. But the ugly bald guy wasn't normal. He had special abilities too and attacked. The stalker used telekinesis to bind Shugo with cloth, leaving our hero immobilized right at the entrance. However, Shugo turned the tables by releasing a burst of energy that broke the bindings on him and Ayana. The kidnapper, freaking out over the rejection, attacked by telekinetically throwing knives, but the MC used the bed as a shield, charged forward, and pinned the guy to the floor. The villain tried one last dirty trick, but Ayana awakened her power. A spiritual entity handed her a rifle, and she fired an ice shot that almost took Shugo out with it, and blew a massive hole in the building. The criminal was left unconscious next to the hole, and Ayana nearly passed out in Shugo's arms. They didn't even know each other personally yet, but their story begins long before this day.
The story begins with Shugo's friend asking about his plans for the break, mentioning that he'll be working with his uncle. In response, the boy says he might open a karate dojo since he can't go pro anymore. Because of that, his friend comments that he'll need a lot of money to get started. Suddenly, his companion gets excited upon seeing a stall still selling buns nearby. Right after, a taxi pulls up, and he rushes him to go buy the bread. The next moment, the young man abruptly turns to the side. Then two men grab him from behind and cover his head with a sack. While eating, his friend sees him being forced into the car by a man yelling for him to stay down. Startled, the other drops his food and yells, wanting to know what they're doing. Next, he runs after the taxi in vain as it speeds off. Inside the car, the victim remains restrained with his head still covered. Even so, he manages to ask who they are. One of the men replies for him to see for himself and removes the sack from his head. Upon recognizing the driver, he asks in surprise why he's there. With a smile, the man at the wheel simply says it's been a while, kid. The passenger stares at the driver while recalling an event from the past. In his memory, reporters surround him asking if he really used doping in the tournament. Faced with the accusations, he just looks away in complete silence. Back then, the man in the car walked past him with a victorious smile. Shortly after, in a fit of rage, the fighter violently attacked him. With his rival already on the ground, he accused him of planting the drugs and told him to get ready. While the man on the ground begged for mercy, he raised a bat to strike him. Back in the present, the driver shouts that because of him, he lost his leg and his chance to win. Saying that, the car speeds away from the area. Through the mirror, the driver orders his men to take good care of the prisoner. Then the three of them drag him into a narrow alley. Even so, the boy taunts them and asks if they want another round. One of the goons complains that because of him, his brother can't get a job anymore. Impatient, the driver yells at them to stop talking and get on with it. With that, the fighter assumes a combat stance, ready for the confrontation. The first thug quickly moves in to attack. In an instant, he punches the other man in the face. Soon, he had already knocked both attackers to the ground. Angry at the defeat, the driver pulls out a knife and curses. At that moment, his friend shouts for them to stop, saying the police are coming. With that, the attacker lunges and manages to make a shallow cut on his face. Even wounded, he smiles and says that wasn't half bad. In a swift move, he grabs the man's wrist. Then he twists the attacker's arm, who screams in pain from the move. With that, he takes the knife for himself. Right after, he uses the weapon to strike back at his opponent. The blow is so strong that the knife gets lodged in the wall behind the man. Completely defeated, the attacker falls to the ground, terrified. With a threatening glare, the boy warns him that next time, it won't just be his leg. Suddenly, the sound of police sirens echoes through the area. As they walk away from the police, his friend laments that the world championship could have been possible 2 years ago. With that, he remembers a happy moment with his parents, celebrating a victory. Back in the present, he stares into nothing with a lost look, holding a glass. His friend tries to comfort him, saying at least now he can spend time with his family. Soon after, the two continue walking along the sidewalk. His companion then calls his mother, saying he's with someone and will be home soon. Meanwhile, the attacker, being taken away by the police, asks why they didn't go to his house. Alarmed, the young man questions if he did something to his family. With a shout, the man tells him to go home and see for himself. Seeing his reaction, the friend calls his name concerned. Then he starts talking about his family, making him even more panicked. Desperate, he runs off as his friend yells his name. On the ground was the glass with all the water spilled. Terrified, he runs home shouting for his dad and mom. When he arrives, he finds the house dark, empty, and completely ransacked. Amid the silence, he runs his hand over a messed up surface. Meanwhile, the words of the attacker and his friend echo in his mind. Suddenly, he hears a voice calling him Big Brother, In front of him, a white-haired woman appears at the entrance of the house. Right after, she runs to hug him, saying he took too long to arrive. Desperate, she reveals that their mother was in a car accident and that she doesn't know what to do. As they run, the boy asks which hospital their mother is in and if their father is with her. With that, his sister stops running and hesitates, starting to talk about their father. She then reminds him that their father died last year. The memory takes him back to a train station years ago. In that scene, his father was handing him a travel bag for his departure. Smiling, the young man said goodbye as he picked up the bag, saying it was time to go. With that, his father asked him to do his best and not worry about the family. In response, he promised to stay in touch frequently. He then remembers that because he had joined a secret unit, contact with the outside world was forbidden. Suddenly, the pain of that memory makes him scream in desperation for his father. Soon, he remembers that 2 years after that departure came the final goodbye. Back in the present, he stares at an old photo of his father. On his knees, he laments not having returned sooner to see him one last time. At that moment, his sister hands him a drink and calls him to go see their mother. With a nod, he agrees and gently pats her head to comfort her. Next, the two arrive in front of a huge hospital. Together, they look at their mother lying in bed, hooked up to machines. A nurse then approaches them to warn that the treatment payment is overdue and the medication will be suspended. Suddenly, the sister shows a bag with a sad look in her eyes. With the bag in hand, she tries to walk away, but he stops her from leaving. He then holds her by the shoulder and asks what's wrong. In response, she shows him the money in the bag, and he questions her about its origin. Crying, Kate explains that it's her college money because she can't abandon their mother. Then she hugs him and says what matters is that they're together now that he's back. Her brother then comforts her, saying he won't let her give up college because he has compensation money. With that, he holds her hand and assures her they'll pay the bill. Soon after, the two approach the hospital's front desk. A nurse then comes over and says the doctor is waiting for him. As soon as they enter the room, they find the doctor with his back turned, and the young man calls out to him. With a serious tone, the doctor turns and asks them to sit down. The doctor then reveals that the situation is serious and that the surgery will leave after effects. While they listen, he adds that the costs, including rehabilitation, will be very high. Finally, he asks them to think carefully before deciding, but is met with a determined look. Right after the conversation, the siblings leave the hospital. With a discouraged look, Cade tells her brother that despite everything, she's going to work. With that, he pats her head and tells her to focus on her studies because he'll take care of the expenses. Moved, she thanks him, and then he suggests they head back home. After dropping her off at home, he walks alone through the city thinking about how to get money fast. He then grabs his phone, thinking maybe his friend has an idea. On the other end of the line, his friend answers and asks what happened. Shugo explains the family situation and asks if he knows a way to make quick money. Right after, he receives a message with a link to a game called Mellow World. An ad then promotes a full immersion game that takes players beyond the future. The ad goes on, explaining that the game allows you to create your own world by purchasing a special capsule. Smiling, the host reveals that the prize for first place is 2 billion yen. Faced with the promise, he realizes he has no choice but to play to win the money. Even so, he yells at his friend on the phone, calling it a scam, but the friend tells him to wait. The friend then explains that although the game is mysterious, it's true that some people became billionaires through it. He continues, explaining that the game was supposedly created by a rich and bored man. According to the story, everyone thought players would quickly tire of the game's simple tasks. However, the realism and the chance to earn real money made everyone addicted to it. Still unsure, he asks if this is a joke, but the friend denies it and mentions the advantage of fighting using your own body. With that, he starts to consider trying it, but remembers that the capsule costs 800,000 yen, money he also doesn't have. His friend then confesses that he's also waiting to play, but he knows he wouldn't stand a chance if he joined. After the call, the young man asks the delivery workers to install the capsule in his room. When Cade questions him, he explains that it's an experiment to help pay his mother's medical bills. Shortly after, the clock on the wall shows 10 past 10. While his sister looks pensive, he peeks through the door and asks her not to interrupt him. Already inside the capsule, he convinces himself that what his friend Kentaro said was true. With his eyes closed, he gets ready to begin the game immersion. Then, the loading screen displays his starting data and the system prepares him for the adventure. Upon entering the game, he finds himself in a completely destroyed city. While touching some rubble, he's surprised at how real everything feels. With that, he crouches down to test how strong his combat body is. In an instant, he kicks a piece of wood that shatters completely. Then his foot generates a wave of purple energy from the impact. Surprised by the power, he feels an incredible strength in his body and decides to check his stats. He then tries to access the system to use his magical power. Suddenly, a small fairy appears in the air to guide him. The creature introduces itself as the system spirit, welcoming the player. She explains that the game only has melee and ranged attacks, and for now, he doesn't have any magical abilities. Next, the fairy says she'll introduce him to the game world. The story begins by revealing that, At the edge of development, humanity went to war. Because of nuclear missiles, the human population shrank and animals mutated. Over time, the creatures became stronger and more aggressive, causing humans to lose their territory. The fairy concludes by explaining that humans also changed, gaining an energy called magical power. She ends by saying that the new humanity decided to reclaim the earth, and his mission is to defeat the monsters. Right after that, the creature finishes her explanation about the game world. With a smile, she says it's an open-world game and he can explore it however he likes. The player then questions if that's it, thinking the tutorial was too random. He then worries about how he'll make money without a main quest or magical skills. Suddenly, he notices the shadow of a bird passing in the sky. In the next instant, a giant eagle lands abruptly in front of him. Even so, he smiles and comments that he's already in danger right at the start of the game. With a defiant look, he promises to show the strength of the country's #1. With that, the enormous creature charges at him once again. Even in the face of danger, he yells for the monster to come at him with everything. In a quick leap, he manages to jump onto the eagle's back. Then he grips the creature's feathers tightly. Riding the bird, he's amazed to find himself riding a mutant falcon. Soon after, the eagle takes flight, carrying him far into the sky. He smiles as the bird climbs, daring it to throw him off in the clouds. Then he pulls the creature's feathers and says they'll see who can hold out longer. With that, the eagle screeches in pain from the yank. The bird then starts flying erratically to shake him off. Suddenly, the creature crashes into something in a big cloud of dust. With the impact, the eagle ends up stuck in a rock wall. Seeing the defeated animal, he declares his victory and wonders if the strength he felt was magical power. He then reflects that defeating monsters usually grants experience and decides to try something. With a gentle pat, he names the bird Kuro, believing that having a pet will be useful. Soon after, he steps onto the rocky ground to dismount. As he walks away, the creature watches him from behind. Suddenly, Kuro widens his eyes in panic upon seeing something approaching. With a screech from the bird, he turns and sees feathers falling all around him. He then sees his new pet being captured in the jaws of a monstrous cat. Shocked, he realizes he can't turn his back on a predator that size or he'll be eaten alive. As the giant cat roars, he backs away, startled by the sight. Then, the monster's paw lunges forward in a fast and direct attack. Suddenly, the feline creature screams as it's struck by something. In the next instant, the cat is swallowed by another creature. Soon, a giant koala appears, wearing Gento Shugo's exclusive medallion. Surprised, he wonders if an exclusive monster isn't a bit much. Shugo found himself face to face with a giant monster radiating a dark and threatening aura. Suddenly, the koala lunged with a fast and furious strike. Right after that, its fist smashed into the ground, and the boy jumped to dodge the impact. He then realized with surprise that the movements resembled taekwondo. Next, the monster attacked him with a spinning back fist. A swift sweep followed right after, aimed directly at him. With the blow, he was thrown against a tree and found himself cornered. The creature then raised its paw for a crushing attack. It followed with an axe kick that split an entire tree in half. He reflected that, although he knew how to fight that way, he didn't know how to beat someone bigger and faster. In response, the koala leaped into the air for a powerful spinning kick. He barely managed to dodge the attack and celebrated his evasion. The creature then landed heavily, surprised that it missed the strike. Even so, he was hit squarely by the debris from the impact. With the force of the collision, he was flung away and fell to the ground, completely defeated. Lying on the ground, he wondered if he was going to die, but remembered he had to live to help his mother. With a light in his eyes, he decided he would survive no matter what. Suddenly, he found himself in a dark void and wondered where he was. Next, he noticed that his body was surrounded by a glowing aura. Soon after, something above caught his attention. A column of intense light appeared in the middle of the arena, shooting toward the sky. As his physical body was pulled into the light, his spiritual avatar watched everything. The body kept rising through the beam of light, drifting away from the ground. The light ascended through the skies of a ruined city. The avatar observed the unconscious body being carried away by the energy. At the same time, a hexagonal energy sphere began to crack. The beam of light then curved in the sky like a ribbon. In an instant, the beam descended and struck the ground with great impact. With the collision, he was left on the ground exactly as he had been before. His avatar then noticed that the body hadn't disappeared like in other games and wondered why. Suddenly, the spiritual form was pulled back into the body. Then, the spirit fused completely with the physical form. Soon, he became one again, still lying unconscious on the ground. A moment later, he suddenly opened his eyes. As he stood up, he felt renewed, with sharper senses than before. Next, he tested his legs with a series of rapid kicks in the air. With new confidence, he turned to face his opponent. The koala monster was watching him from the other side of the battlefield. He then smiled and asked if the monster had followed him on purpose for a second round. In response, the creature prepared to attack again with fury. As the fist came down, he managed to block the blow with crossed arms. He then realized that his technique was superior and that he could withstand the fight. With that in mind, he decided to sacrifice one arm to seize the initiative on the next move. Knowing that a living being's jaw connects to the brain, he jumped to strike at that opening. In the next moment, he landed a powerful kick right on the monster's jaw. He knew the first hit rattled the enemy's brain, but he would need a follow-up strike to bring it down. Quickly, he didn't hesitate and charged at the creature. Then he jumped into the air to deliver a descending heel strike. The kick landed squarely on the monster's head with crushing force. With that, the stunned creature collapsed to its knees, completely drained of strength. He knew the throat was the next weak spot, and that this was his chance to end the fight. Taking advantage of the opening, he stepped in and landed a direct punch to the koala's throat. The final blow caused the creature to dissolve entirely into dark energy. Right after, he dropped to his knees, exhausted, as a glowing item appeared on the ground. A fairy then appeared to congratulate him for leveling up, restoring his HP and MP. Next, the tiny guide observed him as he recovered on the ground. He then analyzed the screen for the skill, Soul Devourer, and wondered if it consumed magical power. With a smile, he decided the technique was perfect and that he would learn it immediately. Thus, Shugo looked up at a golden, glowing symbol that appeared in the sky. Soon, a wave of golden energy enveloped him, completing the process. After that, a status screen appeared detailing his new abilities. With a smile, the boy felt 100 times stronger with his new powers. After testing a punch, he understood that his HP represented his vitality and was now at its max. Next, he turned to a large rock, ready to test his new strength. With determination, he planted his foot firmly on the ground, preparing for the kick. With a single blow, he shattered the rock into countless pieces. Impressed, he questioned how the game could feel so real. Suddenly, an electronic sound caught his attention. Then the fairy informed him that a message had arrived from a friend. In the message, his companion said he knew he was in the game and asked if it didn't feel real. The player agreed it felt too real and asked how the other had managed to find him. His friend then explained that the game uses real names, allowing people to find each other online. After understanding, the young man asked how he could make money in that place. The friend then showed the map of the survival district and invited him to go there to earn money, but warned him to be careful. Soon after, he alerted him about violent monsters on the way before saying goodbye. The boy tried to question him, feeling that his acquaintance was hiding something. Even so, he decided to check out what this survival district was like in such a ruined world. Meanwhile, elsewhere, 3 players were running through a green area toward an abandoned building. One of them then approached the edge of a river, staring closely at the water. With a smile, he prepared to catch what he thought was a fish. Suddenly, a giant worm-like creature leaped out of the water toward him. The monster then bit the player's head in a surprise attack. Upon seeing the scene, his companions shouted that it was a mutant Nizburu and that they needed to run. Right after, several other creatures emerged from the water with ferocity. In an instant, the unfortunate one was completely swarmed by the monsters. As he screamed, he was dragged down by the creatures. At the last second, a barrier of light protected him and lifted him into the air. Watching the scene, the others commented that the place was too brutal for leveling up and questioned the ethics of the game management. While one player watched from the riverbank, Shugo's hand emerged from the water, grabbing the edge. Soon after, he came out of the river carrying the carcasses of the monsters on his shoulders. Holding one of the creatures, the boy asked another player if this was Survival District 100. The player yelled for him not to come any closer, questioning how he was unharmed by a monster that drains life. With a flash of energy, the newcomer tore his shirt, showing his muscles to the shocked players. He then explained simply that all you had to do was use your muscles to block the creature's teeth. To prove his point, his hand crushed the monster's spiny mouth effortlessly. With eyes shining, the player in the cap realized that with this new tactic, he could go really far. Excited, he offered to guide the strongest one to the district just up ahead. Thus, they spotted in the distance the abandoned building of Survival District 102. As soon as they arrived, the sound of a whip cracking on the ground drew attention. A woman with a whip scolded 2 fallen players, saying they weren't high enough level to rebel. Soon after, she whipped them again, threatening to kick them out if they tried it again. Nearby, a man complained about the game's easy missions, saying it felt like a school camping trip. The woman snapped back that she made the rules, and if he didn't like it, he should leave. Angrily, the rebel punched a rock and shouted that he couldn't take it anymore. He then vented that it was impossible to beat those freaks. The response came with disdain, saying that only happened because he was weak. Next, she pointed into the distance and told him to watch someone who fights and survives. That's when the boy approached confidently, carrying the monsters' carcasses. Upon arrival, he threw the pile of monsters on the ground and asked if they exchanged them for points and weapons there. With a satisfied smile, the woman called him the perfect newbie. She then offered experience and coins for the monsters, asking if he'd accept another mission. Then Shugo wonders if making money is really that easy and already wants to know the next quest. Soon, a woman explains that to have peace, they need to hunt monsters and defeat their king. With the mission complete, she announces the reward and offers a normal weapon as an advance. The young man is surprised by the weapon, and the woman confirms that they sell and forge equipment there. Next, she shows the weapon rankings and explains that the coins are the reward for the work. Still holding the sword, the boy keeps a disinterested expression. Annoyed, the woman calls him a rude newbie, while he suspects she's not just an AI. She then gets furious for being compared to an AI and tells him to start the mission immediately. With that, the woman threatens him, saying he'll also feel her whip. Soon after, another boy approaches and warns the newcomer to move, or he'll regret making Lady Charlotte angry. He says that some mistook her for an AI and approached her because of her beauty. Then the boy reveals that Charlotte destroyed them, warning there are penalties for disobedience. Suddenly, Charlotte strikes the boy from behind with her whip. His body then begins to float in a pillar of light and disappear. The swordsman is shocked to realize that administrators can eliminate players with a single blow. Charlotte threatens the group, warning that she'll make them suffer if they speak badly of her again. She then yells, asking if they understood, and everyone agrees in fear. With a gesture, the woman orders everyone back to work. As he watches her walk away, the young man reflects on how her anger feels human. Suddenly, he feels a touch on his shoulder. With a quick reflex, he pins Kentaro to the ground while his friend screams in pain. His expression turns serious as he recognizes who it is. He quickly gets up and apologizes, explaining it was just a reflex. Kentaro complains about his monstrous strength, reminding him that he's only rank 4. The protagonist then asks what the real reason behind the invitation was, and Kentaro smiles awkwardly. He comments that the other's record was already a clue and that he can't hide anything from him. With that, Kentaro admits he came into the game to investigate under government orders. He explains that he thought his friend would notice details regular people wouldn't. Finally, Kentaro describes the game's technology as ultra-realistic, something no country possesses. He then reveals that the government considers the game a threat because it can't be monitored. Next, Kentaro reveals he's the leader of the research team, and Shugo is impressed by the promotion. Even though he already suspected, the young man asks what he should do now to help. In response, Kentaro says that for now, he should just share any information he finds. With that, the young man agrees and says goodbye to begin his mission. As he walks away, a subordinate informs the leader that a team member died in the real world. Upon learning there were no physical injuries, Kentaro concludes that the game is more dangerous than they thought. His subordinate suggests telling Gendo, but he refuses, not wanting to involve the champion. He then reflects that if Gendo learns too much, there will be no turning back. Nearby, a dog-like creature barks at the water, hanging like bait. Suddenly, the small animal gets startled by movement in the water. Soon after, long-necked monsters leap toward it. The creatures quickly coil around the bait's body to trap it. In response, the living lure bites down hard on one of the monster's neck. The enemy is split in half and falls back into the water. Shortly after, the bait is violently yanked away from the shore. Suddenly, the larger creature jumps from the water to devour the decoy. Hidden in the bushes, the swordsman celebrates that the monster finally showed up. With his sword in hand, he waits for the creature to get a little closer. At that moment, a shot hits the monster square in the head. The beast retreats into the water along with its offspring. Then more bullets strike the smaller monsters that followed it. The hunter turns, surprised, trying to figure out if it was a rifle shot. Soon after, he spots a silhouette on a distant cliff. At that location, a girl calculates the distance and wind speed with her rifle. With her aim ready, she fires a fast projectile toward the lake. The shot hits the big monster's head once again. The creature roars in pain from the impact of the second attack. With that, the monster dies and disappears into the water, surprising Shugo. Irritated, he wonders who stole his prey and let it escape. Worried, Shugo reflects that the intelligent monsters that fled could cause problems later. He then looks toward the cliff and wonders who interrupted him. At the top, the girl reveals she was about to finish off the Mizubiru king. As her weapon dissolves, she decides to hunt calmly to level up in that safe area. Suddenly, her eyes widen in complete surprise. Seeing a trail of smoke approaching, she wonders if it's a large monster. Meanwhile, the boy runs at high speed, thinking how the magic enhancing his body makes him feel invincible. Upon reaching the cliff, he notes that he covered a kilometer in 2 minutes and hopes the person is still there. Excited, he prepares to jump, saying this is how a game should be. With a push, he starts running vertically up the cliff wall. Ayana gasps and steps back as she sees him approaching in an impossible way. Soon after, the young man leaps and lands gracefully in front of her. Surprised and now wearing a blindfold, the sniper asks who he is. With a smile, the newcomer asks if she was the one shooting earlier. In response, Ayana's hand glows with a bluish energy as she stares at him. The huntress draws a weapon and threatens him, while he wonders what kind of ability that is. With his hands in the air, he asks her to stay calm, saying he just wanted to meet the shooter. Suddenly, he steps on a branch and accidentally breaks it. The sudden sound puts him in a heightened state of alert. Startled by the noise, Ayana screams and fires wildly in his direction. The boy flinches at the shot that narrowly misses him. He then wonders how she missed at close range when earlier she hit the monster from so far away. Even so, the girl keeps shooting and shouting for him not to come any closer. With no other choice, the swordsman decides he'll have to calm her down by force. With a quick move, he launches 2 beams of blue energy. The attack hits her weapons directly, disarming Ayana in an instant. Now fallen on the ground, she stares at him in fear while he looks down at her. With a smile, the young man asks if she'll finally listen to him now. Ayana calls him a pervert and asks what he plans to do with her. Completely flustered, he insists it's a misunderstanding and begs her to just listen. The shooter stares at the blade of his sword with an expression of pure terror. With the weapon at her neck, the boy threatens to kill her, and Ayana fearfully agrees. 30 minutes later, the two are already sitting and talking more calmly. Ayana realizes he used the dog as bait, and that she ended up stealing his prey by accident. The boy confirms it and demands that she take responsibility since the monster got away. Upon hearing the word responsibility, Ayana panics, and he yells that it's not what she's thinking. Frustrated, he clarifies that he's asking for help to defeat the monster and complains about her imagination. She then asks if the idea is to form a party, and the boy confirms that it's something like that. Next, he introduces himself as Gendo Shugo, a taekwondo specialist. She introduces herself as Himikawa Ayana, a weapons creation specialist, and they shake hands. The young man praises her honesty and asks if her ability created the rifle from earlier. Ayana proudly confirms, making the weapon appear in her hands again. As she assures him she'll be useful, her partner admires her incredible weapon skills. Satisfied, he decides that he's found a great partner and that it's time to plan the strategy. A short while later, he's hanging from a tree as the new bait. As soon as he takes position as the lure, 2 smaller creatures leap from the water to attack him. With that, the 2 monsters are hit and explode in the air before reaching him. Then their remains fall back into the water with a loud splash. Soon after, the lake's surface begins to bubble violently. The fighter then smiles with excitement, realizing that the main creature is coming. He had planned to be the bait so the larger monster would show up while Ayana handled the smaller ones. Confident, he assures that if they join forces, they'll definitely defeat it. Back to the present, the rope holding him snaps suddenly. As he falls, he declares that this time the creature won't escape. At that moment, an even bigger monster emerges to devour him, to his surprise. The boy panics upon realizing there was a creature even larger than the last. The giant monster leaps from the water and chomps down on Shugo midair. Next, the creature closes its mouth and swallows him whole. From afar, Ayana panics, thinking his plan was to get eaten. She then notices something strange about the monster's movement. With that, the creature leaps out of the water uncontrollably as Ayana screams in fear. Inside the monster's mouth, the fighter struggles to keep its jaws open, saying he won't be devoured. When another creature appears to attack him, he realizes he won't dodge in time. With a quick move, the boy uses the larger monster's jaw as a shield to protect himself. The smaller creature is crushed on impact and falls defeated into the water. Ayana contacts him, and he yells for her to run, but she doubts she can kill the monster with one shot. Even so, he insists she shoot, which makes her question if he's lost his mind. Using his foot, the boy jams one of the monster's teeth into its own jaw. Then he reassures her, promising that he has a plan for the situation. A bright light begins to shine from inside the monster's open mouth. Soon after, he leaps out just as the creature bites into itself. As the warrior falls toward the lake, the giant monster writhes in pain. He then lands nimbly on the surface of the water. With his sword glowing, the boy shouts to Ayana that now is the time. Then he runs across the water toward the wounded creature. With a great leap, the attacker prepares to strike the giant monster. He soon drives his sword forcefully into the creature's body. He steadies himself on the monster's back as it thrashes in the water. The creature then turns around, trying to attack him furiously. In response, he stabs his sword into the monster's head to hold on. He then slides down the creature's back, using the sword to slash it. The monster's body finally slackens and falls defeated into the water. Over the comms, Ayana asks if they managed to win. The young man smiles in relief and confirms the mission is complete. Later, the two pose proudly beside the monster's carcasses. When he urges her to hurry, Ayana nervously asks him to go on ahead. With no other choice, the hunter turns to pick up the monster's carcass. Then he throws the creature over his shoulder, while Ayana asks what he thinks he's doing. He reassures her, saying they should just head back and report the mission's success. Ayana shyly thanks him for helping with the hunt. Shugo responds that there's no need to thank him. They fought together as a team. She quickly denies it, explaining that's not what she meant. With that, Ayana reveals that she used to be part of a group some time ago. She says that whenever she got close to a monster, her body would tremble, and she couldn't shoot. After that, she felt like everyone mocked her behind her back, which left her deeply shaken. She then confesses that, one time, her hands trembled so much that she accidentally shot a teammate. Because of the accident, her companions kicked her out, and since then she's hunted alone. Ayana explains that when she started hunting on her own, something unexplainable happened. She found peace in nature, her hands stopped shaking, and she never thought she'd be in a group again. Suddenly, the swordsman stops walking mid-path. Noticing her silence, he asks what happened and why she suddenly stopped. The boy smiles and says there's no problem. They'll make a great team. Even so, Ayana expresses her fear of becoming a burden again. He reassures her, promising to handle the enemies, and she agrees that's the frontline fighter's role. Still uncertain, the huntress starts to hesitate, but her companion confidently says he's strong. Then he urges her to leave before night falls. As she watches him, Ayana reflects that, for a moment, she felt safer with him than with anyone else. With an excited shout, she agrees and runs to catch up with him, filled with renewed confidence. From a distance, Charlotte watches them and concludes that not all rookies are useless. She's soon surprised to realize they've already defeated the monsters. Other players are also shocked by the feat, but Kentaro tells his teammate to gather materials in silence. Suddenly, a man with a group of followers approaches and says it was about time they showed up. The group abruptly stops, blocking the duo's path. Soon, the two find themselves completely surrounded by armed men. The warrior stares them down seriously and asks who they are. Next, the leader smiles menacingly and demands that they hand over the Mizbiru king before disappearing. The young man then questions the administrator about the lack of order, but she responds that she doesn't get involved in conflicts outside her sector. Hearing this, the group's leader laughs and demands he hand over the prey immediately. He then follows the threat with a smile, saying they'll kill him if he refuses. However, curious, Shugo asks how they plan to split the two Mizbiru kings among all of them. With a grin, the man declares that, obviously, it all belongs to him. He then calmly questions why he would give Shugo anything. With an insane expression, the man claims it's because he's the richest of them all. Later, he reveals he hired those thieves to steal everything, since a poor man can't beat a rich one. The young man sighs, complaining that wherever he goes, everything always comes down to money. The man keeps laughing, saying they're just fertilizer for the rich and should be his entertainment. With that, the boy says he doesn't like any of it, but now he knows exactly what to do. Everyone positions themselves in a circle around the giant creature. Suddenly, Shugo lifts the creature's tail, leaving the other men confused by his action. With a powerful spin, he uses the monster to hurl the thieves through the air. As the group leader stares in shock, Ayana suggests it's enough to just watch her friend. Soon, the protagonist glares down at him from atop the creature, declaring that he'll finish him off right there. Desperate, the leader pushes Morioka forward and orders him to defeat Shugo for a bonus. Morioka then boasts about practicing martial arts since he was 8 and promises to crush him with a single blow. Without hesitation, Shugo uses the creature to land a direct hit on Morioka's face. The leader watches in shock, realizing his underling was defeated with one single strike. Next, Shugo throws the monster's body toward the frightened leader. The young man then stares him down, confirming Morioka's name before warning that the leader is next. Terrified, the leader grabs his lei and begs for mercy, but Shugo tells him to let go. The boy challenges him to repeat what he said after being punched, because the memory still infuriates him. However, the enemy punches the ground, which dissolves into a puddle of shadows. Suddenly, Shugo senses something strange and widens his eyes. He quickly notices the leader has vanished, leaving only a shadow trail on the ground. Immediately, the warrior steps on the tip of the shadow that extends across the grass. With a swift move, he grabs the man right out of his own shadow. Thus, Shugo captures the leader, who asks in shock how his ability was discovered. The young man explains he guessed the ability's limit by the shadow, and he was right. Then, the protagonist prepares to settle the score, while the leader screams for him to stop. Ignoring the plea, Shugo launches him into the sky with a single punch. As he soars through the air, the leader screams in outrage about the game's imbalance and threatens to sue. Moments later, the man keeps screaming in desperation during the fall. The scene briefly cuts to an abandoned building overgrown with vegetation. Shugo watches the man disappear into the sky and declares the matter settled. Charlotte then informs them that they can report the mission as completed, and Ayana celebrates the reward. Next, Charlotte explains that they can move on to the next mission and earn more experience in coins. She also reveals that both of them received 1,000 conquest points and unlocked the item shop. Hearing that, Shugo questions where such a big monetary reward is coming from. The sound of a whip cracks sharply in the air. Suddenly, Charlotte appears in front of him and warns the boy not to ask unnecessary questions. She continues the threat, saying he'll experience hell if he does it again. A drifting thought lingers in the air about how strange this game is. As they walk, Shugo reflects that unlike others, this game threatens them, so it won't be easy. Even so, he smiles at Ayana, suggesting they become friends so they can hunt together. Ayana agrees with a blushing face and a happy smile. The scene shifts to a residential building at dawn. With his eyes opening, Shugo wakes up, Inside a capsule, he's surprised to feel full of energy even after hunting all night. Soon, the player notices his phone on a table. Upon picking it up, the screen shows 6 in the morning and a notification for a deposit of 310,000 coins. Shugo then reflects that the money goes into his account and decides to pay the medical expenses first. Upon entering his home, the boy finds the dinner table set. On top of the food, a note from his sister asks him to choose any job he wants, but to take care of his body. Shugo smiles warmly as he reads the message. Looking out the window, he promises to take care of everything at home so his sister Ki can focus on her studies. Elsewhere, a basket of dirty laundry introduces a new setting. Meanwhile, Ayana is taking a relaxing bath. Already in her slippers, the girl walks through her room. Then, Ayana steps out of the bath, drying her hair with a towel. She then sits in her gamer chair in front of the computer. Moments later, Ayana begins her live stream, asking for coins if the audience enjoyed it. On screen, a shooting game match shows an intense shootout. Ayana then winks at the camera, bragging about getting 3 kills in a row. Soon after, fan comments appear, praising her skills and her beauty. With an exhausted expression, the streamer decides that's enough for today. As she says goodbye to the stream, the silhouette of a man appears behind her chair. A hand hits the window, and Ayana thinks it's just exhaustion playing tricks on her. Even so, the young woman turns to the side, sensing something is wrong. A burly man appears, saying he's finally found his beloved Ayana. As she screams in terror, he approaches and tells her to calm down. With a sinister smile, the man claims to control the air in the room so her voice can't be heard. The stalker invites her to have fun with him, and the terrified victim asks what he plans to do. He stares at her, seemingly surprised that she doesn't understand the situation. With a frightening shadow, the attacker says that Ayana will understand everything if she becomes his girl, but the young woman screams at him not to come any closer. At that exact moment, her phone starts ringing on the table. Ayana answers desperately, shouting her location to Shugo, who promises to go rescue her immediately. The girl recognizes the voice on the phone but quickly remembers who it is. She then asks herself in fear how he got her phone number. Furious at hearing a man's voice, the stalker slaps her across the face. He accuses her of hiding so she could be with another man. Yelling that she trampled on his feelings, the aggressor throws her to the floor. As she falls, Ayana feels she's about to lose consciousness. With that, the man grabs a rope and says the obstacle is gone and she will be his. The scene rewinds to 30 minutes earlier in a bustling city. At that moment, Shugo was reading an alert on his phone about the rise in harassment cases. He then watched Ayana's stream from the day before, understanding the reason behind her good aim. Suddenly, his eyes narrow as he notices a suspicious detail. In the window's reflection, the young man spots the shadow of the stalker mentioned in the news. Worried, he thinks about what to do and quickly gets the idea to call Kentaro. The scene then shows the front of a police station. Inside, Kentaro answers a call from Shugo, who asks his friend to get the number of the streamer Ayana Himikawa. Kentaro agrees to use the police system to look it up and quickly finds the number. Over the phone, Shugo explains that the stalker has probably broken into her home and asks for the information. With the number in hand, the young man hurriedly dials on his phone. As it rings, Shugo waits anxiously, hoping she picks up in time. He soon hears Ayana shouting her address and, recognizing her voice, promises he's on his way. With a determined expression, the young man mentally begs her to hang on. Next, Shugo runs through the streets, shouting the address to Kentaro, urging him to hurry. With a push, he runs even faster, desperate to get there in time. The young man tries to stop a taxi, but the car speeds right past him. As the driver yells angrily, Shugo realizes he's felt stronger since the game began. Looking up at the buildings, he calculates that District H is 3 kilometers away and considers jumping. Shugo then focuses, visualizing the city map to find the exact address. With that, he identifies the correct building in the distance. The player decides to test if he's really gained strength and speed, convinced he can make it across the rooftops. Without hesitation, Shugo apologizes and uses the taxi roof as a springboard to leap. As he jumps between buildings, the taxi driver watches in shock and asks if they're filming a movie. With that, Shugo lands perfectly on the rooftop of a building. Next, the young man runs at high speed across the rooftop. The force of each step leaves small cracks in the concrete. With a big leap, Shugo celebrates having made it to the next building. Back in the apartment, the stalker wakes up slightly confused about the location. He soon sees Ayana awake and compliments her scent, while the girl calls him a pervert. The scene reveals that Ayana is sitting and tied up on the bedroom floor. Ayana then asks how the aggressor found her, and the man offers to answer all her questions. With a smile, the stalker explains he saw the balcony during the stream and that God wanted them to meet. He then brags about receiving the power to manipulate objects, proving they are a chosen couple. The man shows a sparkling ring and proposes marriage. With a love-struck gaze, the stalker asks her to be his wife, promising to give her everything she wants. Ayana screams for him to let her go, saying someone like him isn't her type, leaving him confused. With a dark expression, the man calls her foolish for not understanding what's inside him. The stalker then lunges forward, saying he'll take her by force to show his feelings. Suddenly, the bedroom window is kicked open with a loud crash. A booted foot lands firmly on the window frame. Shugo appears at the entrance, relieved that he arrived just in time to save her. Upon seeing Ayana tied up, the kidnapper confronts Shugo and demands to know who he is. Then the man declares he won't forgive the interruption of his time with Ayana. Furious, the aggressor shouts that he'll tie Shugo up so he never gets in their way again. The young man steps back, completely shocked, not understanding what's happening. In desperation, Ayana screams for her friend to be careful, warning that the guy can manipulate objects. Soon after, Shugo ends up being bound by a cloth. The criminal then boasts that it's useless. No one will come between him and Ayana. Suddenly, the kidnapper realized something was wrong. Shugo focused, gathering his strength to fight back. Moments later, the boy shouted that the man wouldn't hold him down and broke free in an explosion of energy. The same energy he released also shattered the ropes restraining Ayana. Thus, Shugo introduced himself as her teammate, Gento Shugo, and said he came to help, to which Ayana thanked him. The kidnapper became furious, repeating that he wouldn't forgive him and questioning why everyone kept interrupting him. Then the villain summoned floating knives, lamenting that he had been so close to confessing his love to Ayana. Ayana asked if that was psychic power, but Shugo answered that the man claimed to have received power from a god. As Ayana screamed that the attacker wasn't her type, Shugo warned her to dodge the attack. The man was shocked by the rejection, which the hero considered a line sharper than any blade. Mocked in his feelings, the kidnapper screamed that he would destroy the world and launched the knives toward them. Quickly, Shugo grabbed the bed to defend himself. Then the protagonist used the bed as a shield to block the incoming blades. Taking the opportunity, Shugo rushed toward the enemy. As soon as he got close, he grabbed the man's wrist firmly. Shugo then stated that he had caught him, and his weird power wouldn't work like that anymore. The attacker seemed surprised to be restrained by the move. With a swift movement, Shugo took him down and pinned him to the ground. Even on the ground, the man tried to use his power one more time. With that, a knife stuck in the ceiling began to fall. The blade fell toward Shugo, who looked up in alarm. Ayana screamed desperately as she realized the danger. Suddenly, an ethereal, glowing figure appeared behind Ayana. Shugo and the kidnapper looked back, both stunned by the sudden apparition. Next, the ethereal figure's hand gathered a sphere of blue energy. The apparition then materialized a sniper rifle that appeared in Ayana's hands. Completely terrified, the kidnapper screamed for them to stop. Ignoring the plea, a powerful shot was fired from the weapon. Then the projectile hit the building, triggering an ice explosion that startled people on the street. The crowd below watched the scene, completely confused by what was happening. With the impact, a giant hole opened in the apartment wall. Shugo looked at the man's body on the ground, thinking he would have turned to ashes too if he hadn't dodged. Soon, the energy faded, and Ayana seemed to faint slowly. The boy quickly caught her before she could hit the floor. Ayana complained about a headache, saying it felt like a dream, and Shugo grew worried that she didn't remember anything. At that moment, Kentaro appeared at the door and asked Shugo if he was surprised. With Ayana by his side, the boy seriously asked him what that was all about. Kentaro then stated that it wasn't the right place and told them to follow him. He led them to a large warehouse in a remote industrial area. A lit red light glowed above the massive entrance door. As they entered, they walked through a spacious corridor, following Kentaro. The trio then stopped in front of a massive metallic door at the end of the hall. As soon as Kentaro announced that they had arrived, Ayana asked what place that was. The door then opened, revealing a room full of futuristic capsules. Kentaro turned and offered a drink to both before continuing. Shugo asked why they were there, and Kentaro revealed that this was his special squad. He then explained that everyone there was elite, and that Ayana's ability came from the game. Kentaro admitted that they still didn't know the origin of the game Mellow World. However, he revealed that abilities from the game had been brought into the real world, with around 300 already identified. The officer continued, saying his unit captures and investigates people who gain power and lose control. With that, he revealed that all players possess a special substance, leaving Shugo shocked. Kentaro concluded that the world was about to go through a transformation, and the young man asked if the officer was trying to recruit them. Kentaro then said he knew Shugo's abilities well, saying he was very strong even though he joined the game later. The agent stated that Shugo's talent was valuable and that, as one of the first to awaken, he had to act, prompting the boy to ask if they would become representatives of the country. With that, he revealed that the government didn't want to miss this opportunity, since the game would change the world. Shugo then smiled and asked about his mother's medical bills in Cade's college. Kentaro assured him that the government would cover everything and even assign the best tutor for Cade. Faced with the offer, Shugo accepted immediately and shook Kentaro's hand. Right after, Ayana interrupted them to ask if it was normal for something to have changed on her panel. Kentaro, in turn, looked shocked at the screen, which showed a 300% increase in experience. Ayana then commented that her experience had increased, even though she hadn't logged in since the previous day. With that, Shuko suggested it could be from defeating the kidnapper, leaving Ayana stunned by the possibility. Kentaro questioned whether the game was encouraging murder, but the boy replied that would be impossible under normal conditions. Then the officer concluded that based on the data analysis, killing an awakened grants a large amount of experience. Shugo reflected that if the number of awakened increases, others will also discover the secret behind the experience. Angrily, Kentaro clenched his fist, asking who could be behind such a horrible game. The young man calmed him down, saying there was no time to mourn and that they needed to investigate to stay ahead. Soon after, he said he was going home to rest, ignoring Kentaro's concern about the game. Shugo then promised to log in at 8 in the evening and wait in the safe zone, to his friend's satisfaction. As he walked away, Ayana shouted that she still hadn't thanked him properly. Kentaro explained that the protagonist left because he didn't want to hear a thank you, leaving Ayana confused. He then clarified that Shugo believes interfering when someone isn't ready is an act of cruelty. The agent concluded that his friend must be feeling guilty, but Ayana disagreed, saying he saved her. To cheer her up, Kentaro promised not to worry, because he would find her a new home. After dinner at his apartment, Cade thanked him for the meal. Shugo told her to study hard because the world was changing, and said their mother's expenses were already covered. He then warned her to run from any danger, making Cade worried and prompting her to ask if something had happened. Her brother replied that he couldn't say yet, but asked her to listen to him, and Cade agreed to do everything he said. With her answer, the boy smiled, feeling a bit more at ease. Then Shugo said he was going to sleep and asked, as usual, for her not to talk to him. As he walked away, Cade thought that, like her sister, she also wanted to carry part of that burden. Soon after, Shugo logged into the game, appearing in Survival Zone 102. He walked through the ruined city, surprised by how real everything felt. However, upon seeing other players, the young man reflected that this world wasn't as simple as a game. Suddenly, Kentaro called to him from afar, waving alongside Ayana. Shugo approached and asked if they were going hunting, since nearby missions gave little experience. Kentaro then pointed to a mountain, suggesting they hunt the mutant beasts there to level up. Shugo smiled and agreed with the plan, asking if they could leave right away. With that, the group headed together toward the forest at the base of the mountain. When they arrived, they found a blood trail and a footprint on the ground. Kentaro commented that it all seemed to have already been hunted, wondering if someone strong was in that zone. Suddenly, the group heard a distant scream for help. Shugo then suggested they go check what was going on. As they approached, they heard the desperate cries of a player. Hidden, they saw a group of players intimidating a single boy. Ayana recognized one of the attackers and asked what they should do, but Shugo preferred to watch first. The leader of the aggressors punched the boy tied to a tree, telling him to shut up and hand over his gear. With his face bruised, the player explained that the item was soul-bound and offered money if they let him go. The attacker mocked the offer and punched him, saying it was satisfying to see a rich boy beg. One of the leader's companions suggested they could tear the item out along with the player's flesh. The leader liked the idea and snapped his fingers, agreeing to the cruel plan. With an evil look, he drew his sword, ready to strike the terrified player. Then the aggressor asked his group if they didn't want to see the rich get what they deserved. With that, the other players shouted in agreement, ready to attack and tear the boy apart. The gang leader mocked that the rich are unloved and that it was the will of the people that couldn't be ignored. With a shout, he raised his sword to strike the defenseless player. Suddenly, a whip flew swiftly through the air toward the strike. Soon, the whip wrapped around the man's arm, stopping his sword at the last second. Surprised, the bandit looked around, shouting to know who was there. Shugo and his group emerged from the forest, revealing themselves as the ones who had interrupted. The player tied to the tree recognized the group that had saved him. While the boy begged for help, Shugo commented that tearing off his flesh would be way too cruel. The leader replied that killing was easy, but useless if the equipment disappeared, and the boy's item wasn't enough. With greedy eyes, the group of bandits declared they would also take their equipment. Soon, the bandit leader shouted for his men to attack. Suddenly, Kentaro dashed forward like a shadow, catching two of the attackers off guard. With a swift move, he grabbed one of the bandits by the neck. Kentaro then declared that he could handle all of them alone. Next, the agent created a whirlwind that sucked two of the enemies inside. He threw the rest of the group far away. The officer then celebrated his surprise attack with triumph. The remaining bandits regrouped, eyeing him nervously. They quickly came up with a plan to grab his legs, waist, and head. The group advanced together and managed to pin Kentaro down in a coordinated attack. While being beaten, Kentaro screamed desperately for Shugo's help. The protagonist sighed, commenting to Ayana that he figured this would happen. He then told the girl to wait, as he would deal with the situation soon. Ayana, however, stepped forward and firmly declared that she would do it herself. In front of the enemies, the girl admitted she was weak, but said she could become strong too. With a shout, Ayana activated her weapon manufacturing ability, summoning an ethereal figure with multiple rifles. Completely shocked, the bandits questioned what that apparition was. Ayana then closed her eyes and gave the order to fire. Soon, a barrage of bullets hit the group, even striking Kintaro in the chaos. The bandit leader grew angry, declaring that he had enough power to crush rocks and would fight personally. He then activated his Mega Muscle ability, enlarging his body impressively. With a roar, the man charged at Ayana with full force. At the last moment, his wrist was stopped by a firm hand. Shugo held him back, saying it wasn't chivalrous for a big guy to intimidate a girl. He quickly threw the leader to the ground and told Kintaro to take care of the rest. The bandit stood up furiously, warning Kintaro not to underestimate him. In rage, he shouted that he would turn him into ground meat. Next, the man launched a powerful punch toward Kintaro. The leader was shocked to realize his punch had been completely stopped. Kintaro then revealed that his reflection ability absorbed and returned attacks at double the power, making him untouchable. With that, Kintaro shouted for the man to taste his own attack and launched a blast of energy. After defeating the leader, Kintaro declared the matter settled, causing the other bandits to flee in terror. Soon after, the ropes tying the player to the tree snapped. Shugo then approached and told the boy he could go now. In gratitude, the player clung to Shugo's leg, promising to obey him, but the protagonist told him to let go. The boy insisted he was serious and offered the boss's location as proof of his sincerity. Kintaro, however, got excited and asked in surprise if he really knew where the boss was. He then praised the boy's attitude, while Shugo thought about how naive he was. Even as the agent spoke of experience, the player warned that they should level up first. Shugo agreed and asked him to guide them, at which point the boy introduced himself as Morioka Hikaru. With that, Hikaru led the group through a narrow path along the edge of a cliff. Kintaro asked if the boss was really ahead, and Hikaru confirmed there was a volcanic lake just above. The boy then suggested they didn't have to fight today and could return the next day. Suddenly, Shugo's sharp hearing picked up a sound approaching. Immediately, the young man turned and warned the group that someone was coming. Shugo spotted in the distance a group of players attacking another on the cliff. Right after, a captain ordered his soldiers to hurry so they wouldn't lose sight of them. Then, a soldier spotted Shugo's group, and the captain mocked them, saying they wouldn't be able to move forward that way. The captain then gave the order for his men to use clawed boots. Next, the soldiers launched climbing hooks to quickly scale the cliff. One of the claws struck deep into the rock wall. Using the ropes, they began to climb the cliffside with great agility. The captain lodged his spear into the rock, creating a support point for himself. As soon as they reached the same height, the soldiers drove their spears into the rock to form a platform. Then, the captain ordered them to hand over the boy or be killed as well. Shugo asked if they knew them, but Hikaru frantically denied and tried to flee. Kintaro, however, found something strange and commented that he had never seen that kind of equipment near the camp. The captain smirked with disdain, stating that to them, players were also considered prey. With a command shout, the leader ordered his men to kill everyone there without hesitation. Unexpectedly, armed soldiers began descending the cliff while firing. To defend them, Ayana focused and summoned the creation of a shield. Soon, the energy barrier materialized and blocked the enemy fire. Kintaro, meanwhile, shouted in anger, questioning why they were being attacked by surprise. Shugo then asked if Ayana could create a weapon, but she replied that a shield was the best she could do. As the enemies approached, the protagonist watched them from below. Determined, he said there was no other choice and requested 2 long spears. Shugo's hands glowed with blue energy as his power activated. With a strong impact, material was ripped from the cliff wall. Right after, the young man climbed up the wall with the new spears in hand. Without hesitation, he struck the first soldier and announced it was just the beginning. The other guards reacted and charged to kill him with their own spears. With a swift aerial move, Shugo dodged the incoming attack. Then he spun and attacked 3 more enemies at once. After landing, the boy prepared to face the next wave of soldiers. One of the soldiers screamed in terror for the warrior not to come any closer. Shugo then used the cliff wall as leverage to leap. With a smile, he said it was too late as he advanced. In a single spin, the hero struck all the enemies at once, telling them to fall together. Suddenly, he felt a new energy and realized that killing players also increased his level. To steady himself, Shugo drove one of the spears into the stone wall. Just ahead, the leader watched him while standing on 2 spears and praised his skill. Shugo smiled back and asked if the opponent was the boss of the group. Determined, the player charged forward to deal with Hikaru while he had the chance. With force, he pushed the opponent's weapon aside to create an opening. The leader's spear was deflected and struck the wall with a loud impact. Taking advantage of the gap, Shugo spun in the air to land a kick. The enemy only smiled and channeled a bright blue energy into his hand. The kick and punch collided, causing an explosion of energy. With the impact, Shugo was thrown back, surprised by the strength of the blow. Leaning on his spear, the protagonist was shocked to realize the power was electricity. The leader then confirmed he could channel electricity through his gloves and said Shugo couldn't beat him. Relieved, the young man thought the terrain had saved him, but quickly sensed something was wrong. The opponent commented that Shugo's movements were very skilled, and it was strange not to know someone so strong. Shugo called him an idiot and asked if the native really thought that was the real world. Hikaru then asked if the leader had seen the rebirth light and revealed that they were not players. Surrounded by an electric aura, the enemy declared they were natives, leaving Shugo in shock. Tired of talking, the leader stated that it was exactly as it seemed and charged to kill him. He leaped to attack with his electric power, but Shugo dodged the blow at the last second. The opponent taunted him for running away, thinking players didn't fear death. With a smile, Shugo replied that he wasn't in the mood and that he needed to investigate the natives. The leader then turned to leave, saying his comrades were dead and that he would move on to the next objective. Watching the opponent walk away, Shugo wondered if they were really born in that world. The journey took him to a vast frozen lake surrounded by mountains. As soon as he arrived, the protagonist landed on his knees at the water's edge. Ayana finally reached the top and asked worriedly if everyone was okay. Angrily, Kentaro shook Hikaru, demanding an explanation about the attackers, while the boy complained he was going to puke. As soon as Shugo returned with his spears, Hikaru immediately begged for his help. The young man intervened and told Kentaro to stop immediately. Next, Shugo grabbed Hikaru and pressured him for answers without any mercy. Pinned to the ground, Hikaru begged the hero to stop and promised he'd tell them everything. After the confession, the group stared at the lake with Hikaru subdued in the sand. Suddenly, a massive explosion of water erupted from the center of the lake. From the waters, a gigantic monstrous lion emerged, roaring in their direction. Terrified, Hikaru pointed at the creature and shouted that it was the area boss. Taking advantage of the distraction, the boy announced that he'd let them go for now and prepared to flee. Shugo ignores the escape and decides they need to deal with the giant feline first. The monster, in turn, roars imposingly as it rises from the water in front of the group. Immediately, Shugo yells for everyone to spread out and orders Kentaro to defend, and Ayana to provide support. Ayana then summons a golden shield for Kentaro, who assures them they can count on him. With a strong impact, the shield anchors into the ground. Soon after, the officer holds it firmly to protect everyone. When the creature fires a water blast, he uses the shield to reflect the attack. Hit by its own energy, the monster staggers backward from the impact. As soon as the creature is stunned, Shugo shouts that now is the time and charges forward. With a great leap, the young man launches himself into the air to strike the monster's head. The creature then unleashes a blast of energy, trapping Shugo, who thinks it's the end for him. With a confident smile, Kentaro calls his friend an unbelievable guy. Then he throws the shield like a projectile toward the monster. Shugo lands perfectly on the moving shield and praises the good play. Using the weapon as a board, the protagonist serves toward the creature's head. On top of the monster, he delivers powerful strikes with his spear as the beast roars in pain. The hero jumps from the shield midair, preparing for a decisive blow against the monster. He then realizes the creature's body is too large for a fatal hit and decides he needs to get closer. Suddenly, a strange feeling makes him hesitate for a moment. Looking back, Shugo is stunned to sense a new powerful aura. To Kentaro's amazement, Ayana is now holding a massive sniper rifle surrounded by golden energy. The girl remembers how she always lived in fear, unable to fight properly. In her memories, even the smallest sound would distract her and prevent her from using her true skills. But seeing her friends protect her, she decided she needed to overcome that fear to support them. Back in the present, her eyes shine with power as the sharpshooter finally spots an opening. With her new vision, she identifies 4 vital points on the creature's body. Ayana takes firm aim through the scope and confirms she's locked onto the target. Then she fires a sequence of golden energy shots from her rifle. Hitting all weak points, the lion roars in intense pain. The monster's head begins to dissolve into smoke, signaling its defeat. Finally, the creature's body collapses lifelessly back into the water, ending the battle. After the victory, Ayana's rifle dissolves into particles of golden energy. Exhausted on the ground, she says with relief that they finally did it. Shugo then praises her for the 4 precise shots, saying it was the right call. Ayana blushes, flustered by the unexpected compliment. Next, a golden aura surrounds her friends, indicating they've leveled up. Shugo realizes his own level also increased and notes the impressive amount of experience gained. Near the monster, Hikaru celebrates, saying the beast was an S-rank mission with excellent rewards. Kentaro, in turn, also celebrates, saying that besides Shugo, he's never felt afraid of anything. Without them noticing, Hikaru approaches Kentaro from behind. When the officer asks what he's doing, Hikaru thanks them for helping him complete his mission. Suddenly, blood-like tentacles emerge from the monster and seize a confused Hikaru. He screams in pain, not understanding why this is happening. Kentaro is frozen, watching the scene in complete horror. Before his eyes, a red energy consumes Hikaru's body as the boy screams. The energy then condenses and forms a new sinister red armor around him. Shocked by the transformation, Kentaro asks what that armor is. Without warning, Hikaru attacks him with a punch that cracks the frozen ground. With his face now covered by a mask, The possessed boy turns to the group and asks if they've lost their minds. Struggling against the control, Hikaru apologizes and says the armor is forcing him to kill them all. Shugo steps forward and says he's disappointed Hikaru never told him the truth, but Hikaru claims he had no choice. While Kentaro mutters that he knew something was off, the protagonist questions whether it's really just an armor. Hikaru refuses to answer and shouts that he can't reveal the truth. Then he yells that he's reached his limit and charges at the group. At the moment of the attack, Shugo grabs Ayana and jumps to shield her from the explosion. The young man slides across the ground until he comes to a stop in safety, still holding Ayana in his arms. When Ayana asks what he's going to do, Shugo replies with a smile that he's going to find out the truth. Possessed by the armor, Hikaru rushes forward uncontrollably to attack the hero. With a swift movement, Shugo blocks his punch using the sole of his foot. Right after, he counterattacks with a precise kick that hits Hikaru in the face. With his eyes glowing blue, the young man asks if the opponent has experience in martial arts. Immobilized, Hikaru screams desperately that the armor is moving him against his will. Shugo then replies that that alone isn't enough to justify his movements. With that, he punches him in the face, yelling that there's no armor to protect him here. The protagonist watches his opponent fall after the strike with a serious expression. Right after, he feels the bones in his arm crack from the impact and realizes he can't fight. Facing the shadowy figure of Hikaru, Shugo wonders how he will defeat him. As Hikaru charges with a punch, Shugo narrowly dodges the blow. Kentaro then intercepts with the golden shield, blocking the powerful attack. Shugo yells for Ayana to shoot at Hikaru's joints to stop him, even if it means killing him. Desperate, Hikaru shouts for the armor to say something too. Kentaro stares at him, confused, asking who the boy is talking to. Struggling against the armor, Hikaru yells that the boss's power is too strong and will explode if it's not used. With the shield cracking under the pressure, Kentaro warns that he's at his limit. The energy barrier begins to shatter under the force of the attack. With a massive explosion, the shield finally breaks, throwing them both backward. Shugo then yells for Ayana to act, and the sniper confirms the order with her eyes still blindfolded. Without hesitation, she fires a golden energy shot with her rifle. The shot hits Hikaru directly in the chest, stopping his advance. As he runs forward, Shugo shouts for them to keep shooting to drain the armor's energy. Kentaro warns him with concern, reminding him of his arm injury. Even so, Shugo says it's no time to worry, and that it's worth trying since they can revive. With his arm still recovering, the protagonist advances and lands a series of rapid punches to Hikaru's chest. The unexpected attack leaves the possessed boy completely surprised and with no time to react. Then Shugo throws himself to the ground and grabs Hikaru's legs with a determined smile. He then jumps and begins to spin him at high speed. Impressed, Kentaro and Ayana comment that it was amazing and incredibly fast. In the next moment, Hikaru is slammed to the ground. Kentaro then asks if they got him, but Ayana replies that the fight isn't over yet. Through the smoke, Hikaru is thrown far away like an out-of-control top. He then crashes violently into the ground and stops, rolling at a great distance. After the blow, both Shugo and Hikaru collapse to the ground completely exhausted. Kentaro approaches to help Shugo, who is still recovering on the ground with a wounded body. As he helps him up, Kentaro complains about the dangerous technique, but Shugo says it's only possible because they're in a game. Wasting no time, Ayana points her rifle at the weakened Hikaru's head on the ground. Hikaru begs them to wait, but the group surrounds him, determined to get answers. With a serious look, Ayana warns she'll shoot if the boy doesn't tell the whole truth. Under pressure, Hikaru agrees to explain everything, nervously asking where he should start. Unexpectedly, the entire group stares in shock and surprise at a new presence. An elf woman appears in a golden aura of light and begins healing Hikaru's body. She then introduces herself to the group as Yura and thanks them for saving her. Shugo then suggests that, as thanks, the elf could explain what's going on there. The group then sits down to hear the story amid the mountainous scenery. Yura begins revealing that the attackers were chasing her because of a power they wanted. Suddenly, she slaps Hikaru and asks why he's staring at her. Right after, the elf points to a red jewel on her chest and says that's what they were after. Yura then explains that she is a native, or an NPC, and that this is just the beginning of the truth. Kentaro is shocked by her intelligence, commenting how the game feels just like real life. The native responds that to the natives, this game is real life, and that they are very similar. Intrigued, Shugo asks what she means by that comparison. Yura begins to explain that just like players gain points by killing NPCs, natives have their own method too. The elf reveals that they can absorb fragments of awakening and grow stronger by killing the awakened. Finally, she details that the world is divided between regular people who work and the awakened who use their powers. Yura explains that originally everyone built the world together until the awakened realized they could gain skills by killing one another. With that, they began killing for power, but the process was slow until the arrival of the players. Kentaro then deduces that the awakened want to kill the players, and Yura confirms that to them. Players are like natural-born awakened. She goes on, explaining that they can gain power by killing players, who who can be killed infinitely due to resurrection. As soon as the players appeared, the Awakened joined forces to trap them in their territory and exploit their immortality. Kentaro complains about being exploited but still doesn't understand why Yura specifically was being hunted. Shugo agrees and questions the value of the jewel, and Yura confirms it's special because she wasn't an Awakened at first. Then the elf reveals that her father created the jewel to cure her illness, and its power turned her into an Awakened. Shugo concludes that the enemies want the jewel for research and asks why she's on the run. With trembling hands, Yura says they killed her father for the jewel and now plan to kill her as well. She then reveals she gains power differently by consuming blood and asks for help with her revenge. To convince them, Yura offers a special secret, and Shugo asks what kind of secret that would be. On her knees, she reveals that, by God's command, everything will be resolved in 7 days. Completely confused, Kentaro wonders what that revelation means. Yura further reveals that her father asked her in a letter to remember something related to the truth of the world. With that, Kentaro questions whether it could be a natural disaster like a volcanic eruption or an earthquake. Shugo disagrees, thinking a simple disaster wouldn't be taken seriously, and suggests a ritual or awakening ceremony. Yura considers the possibility but admits she's not sure about that. Next, the protagonist sighs and says that without enough clues, everything is just a guess. Suddenly, Yura kneels before them, claiming she has no other choice, while the group watches her without understanding. Soon, she explains that her base was attacked and asks them to recover her father's documents, to which he had devoted his life to curing her. Yura continues, revealing that her father was killed by people from the 7 great bases, prompting Shugo to ask her to tell them more. Thus, the elf says her father mentions 7 awakening bases spread across different biomes of the world. She then reveals she belongs to the forest base, where there's a secret lab that only she knows how to access. Even so, Kentaro apologizes and says that unfortunately, he won't be able to help. Shugo crouches, explaining that he realized in the last battle that her pursuers are very strong. He continues, saying they only survived because they were on a cliff where they could use mobility to their advantage. With his hand on Yura's shoulder, the young man warns that they won't stand a chance against so many enemies in a base, even if they revive stronger. Shugo states they should forget about it, as they can't draw attention right now. Hikaru clenches his teeth, making a tough decision in silence. Unexpectedly, the boy bows to the ground and begs Shugo to help Yura if he finds a safe route. Yura is moved by his gesture, seeing a small light of hope in the midst of despair. Then, Ayana asks why her friend is getting so involved, and Hikaru confesses that he loves Yura. He then promises that even if he's not strong, he'll become everyone's shield if necessary. Faced with the promise, the rest of the group just stares at him with confused expressions. Kentaro feels awkward about the situation, wondering why they should care about a mere NPC. Even so, Kentaro asks if they should help her, and Shugo agrees he has no objections. Shugo turns to Yura, commenting that Hikaru will do his best, though he seems uncertain about the outcome. At that moment, Yura has a brilliant idea. Excitedly, she reveals that there are legendary items in the lab and promises to give them to the group. Upon hearing the word legendary, Shugo declares that there's no way he can turn down such a good quest. So they decide to rest for the night and set out the next morning. The group then rests around the fire, preparing for the journey ahead. Alone, Shugo gazes at the starry sky reflected in the lake before the mountains. Soon, Ayana approaches and asks if she can sit beside him. She then comments that her friend planned to help Yura from the start, recalling Hikaru's determination. Ayana observes how much Hikaru must love Yura, and Shugo agrees, saying that's why he accepted him as his younger brother. With a smile, Shugo adds that it's a good chance to learn about the world, and that Kentaro feels the same way. Ayana reveals she came to ask the protagonist not to overdo it, as he tends to take everything upon himself. Shugo looks at her as she says that now he has people by his side and asks if it's not worth trusting them a little. Next, Ayana says goodnight and goes to sleep, with the young man replying the same. Shugo remains silent, reflecting on her words. The next morning, Hikaru's clones push a large boulder to reveal a passage. Hikaru then turns to the group and proudly announces that he found the entrance. Annoyed, Kentaro questions why the paths the boy finds are always dangerous. Hikaru explains that his shadow ability helped him explore the mountain, making him a specialist in escape routes. With that, Kentaro admits with some pity that the boy has been through a lot. Hikaru gives a thumbs up, proudly claiming that no one is better than him at escaping, to the group's amazement. Hikaru continues pushing the boulder with all his strength. As he pushes it, a dark gap slowly appears in the stone wall. Shugo looks at the dark passage with a suspicious expression. Then the protagonist questions whether the passage really leads to the base, but Hikaru assures him the crevice is a secret. Hikaru explains that the forest base is at the foot of the mountain and that this is the only path to get there. As they enter the crevice, Shugo warns that he won't forgive him if he's lying, but the boy swears there's no mistake. At the end of the path, the group finds a wooden door, and Hikaru announces that they've reached their destination. Ayana is startled by a strange noise from inside, but Shugo simply orders them to move forward. Without hesitation, he breaks the door down with a powerful kick. Upon entering, Shugo finds a bald elf with glasses sitting on the toilet, reading a newspaper. The elf stares at him wide-mouthed, completely shocked and frozen. In a panic, the elf screams about an intruder while frantically trying to pull up his pants. The elf then runs out of the place in desperation. On his way out, he slams the door shut, leaving behind a piece of the newspaper. Outside, a female elf with a blue bandana wonders if she just heard a scream. Hikaru sits on top of the unconscious elf and comments that it was close, while Kentaro criticizes him for the invasion and assault. Hikaru quickly gets up, showing urgency to move on. Yura then looks through the window and says they need to confirm where they are now. Though the fog covers part of the scenery, a ruined city slowly reveals itself. At the center, a colossal tree grows among the abandoned buildings. Through the window, the young woman points at the tree and announces she found her father's laboratory in the wooden tower. Meanwhile, soldiers guard the ramps surrounding the massive structure. Observing the situation, the strategist comments that entering won't be easy. For that reason, he decides the group will only act at night due to the intense surveillance. As darkness covers the sky, the crescent moon shines high above. On the tower's ramp, the sentries continue their night watch. Suddenly, the acrobat appears upside down and greets one of the guards. The man is frozen in shock, unable to comprehend what's happening. With a swift move, the attacker knocks him out and still wishes him good night. After taking out the enemies, he urgently calls his allies to advance. Next, they all dash together up the ramp toward their intended target. Along the way, red fruits hanging from the wall vines begin to emit a bright light. Panicking, the girl realizes the security system has been triggered and warns of approaching reinforcements. While still running, the warrior asks how far to the secret room and hears that it's very close. Soon after, a squad appears and threatens to kill them if they don't stop. Faced with this, the combatant takes a stand and orders the others to move ahead, saying she'll handle the soldiers. Despite the group's resistance, the enemy commander orders everyone to open fire immediately. Quickly, she raises an iron shield to block the hail of bullets. Worried, the boy asks if she'll be alright, but she replies that she's overcome her trauma and now has the strength of an entire division. Trusting her answer, he leads the rest of the team forward to uncover the game's mysteries. With a firm gaze, the Protector watches her companions leave and prepares to face the battle. She then activates her Valkyrie ability, summoning an armed energy figure right behind her. Both charge forward at the same time against the rapidly approaching enemies. Amid the rising smoke, a silhouette appears over the defeated soldiers, asking if it was really necessary to intervene personally. The remaining enemies rejoice at recognizing their captain's presence. The enigmatic figure slowly walks toward the defender. Facing the red eyes that stand out in the darkness, she demands to know who he is. Without waiting for a reply, she states it doesn't matter and fires in his direction. However, the projectiles pass through the captain's body without causing any damage. Surprised, she realizes that he dodged every shot with absolute precision. In an instant, that shadow's hand lunges forward with impressive speed. With that, he grabs her by the neck, completely immobilizing her. While holding her in place, the captain declares that the first one has already been defeated. At the same time, the leader's companions stop and look back, shocked by the scene. Right after, they reach the end of the corridor and find themselves at a dead end. Faced with the situation, the most nervous one in the group panics, but the girl assures them that this is the right place. Then she places her open hand against the wall in front of her. With a firm motion, the young woman pushes hard, revealing a hidden entrance. Immediately, part of the structure begins to slowly slide to the side. A holographic screen soon appears, and the strategist comments that the girl's father truly was a genius. She approaches the panel, asking the others to leave the rest to her. Still, as she types the password, she fails and accidentally activates an unexpected defense program. In the next moment, turrets emerge from the wall, completely catching the girl off guard. Because of this, the two most anxious ones panic, with one of them saying goodbye to her, expecting the worst. However, the leader reacts quickly and kicks the turrets, dodging the incoming shots. After that, he shouts for the others to stop standing around, and they promptly respond. Even so, he turns in confusion, asking what's going on, and the young woman admits she doesn't know. She then returns to the panel and pleads for a little more time, swearing she can get it open. Despite that, the password fails again, and an even more dangerous defense mode is activated. With that, new turrets appear, escalating the desperation of the two companions. While the fighter continues dodging the gunfire, he demands that she hurry, but the girl begins to panic. Out of options, she kneels down in defeat, stating that everything is lost now. However, when she accidentally touches the reader, the fingerprint authentication is accepted successfully. With wide eyes, she can barely believe the unexpected discovery. Then she stands up, embarrassed, admitting that she could have used the fingerprint scanner from the start. Right after that, the secret passage finally opens before the group. Without wasting time, they head down the corridor, finding the girl still shaken on the floor. With shining eyes, the leader calls everyone over to see the information that was left behind. As they observe the scene ahead, all of them show expressions of surprise. As soon as they cross the threshold, they find a room filled with magical equipment on display. Impressed by the value of the artifacts, the most impulsive one comments that they could cause chaos and that they should take everything. Additionally, the group's observer notices the presence of 3 unique items among the rewards and is astonished. Despite the others' excitement, the young woman thanks everyone and explains that she only needs the materials left by her father. Right after, she approaches the pedestal where special armor is displayed. Suddenly, a bright light envelops her body, surprising her with the energy it releases. Worried, the most sensitive guy asks if she's okay and suggests they take her to the hospital. However, the group's leader, irritated, smacks him on the head and tells him to shut up. Then he asks his companion if she found anything important. She confirms that the armor belonged to her father and says her abilities have drastically increased. From that, she reveals that she can now fight with her own strength and mentions that the materials include writings about a god, sparking her companion's curiosity. Next, she begins reading and explains that the 7 great bases emerged naturally until they received a divine revelation. According to the text, immortal entities would appear in the future, bringing with them both chaos and opportunity. During that period, mutant beasts and awakened beings emerged, and even though the bases had power, they fell into conflict. She goes on, saying that a new divine order was issued: eliminate the immortals by any means necessary. She also explains that, at first, no one paid attention, but many hesitated to fight because those who disobeyed were severely punished. In detail, she says that their bodies were condemned to decay, which led to the revelations being followed ever since. With a skeptical tone, the most playful one questions the meaning of it, considering players are immortal, but the leader reminds him of something essential. He clarifies that even NPCs can eliminate players to gain experience, although the gain decreases against more powerful opponents. That way, the other concludes that for players to profit, they'd have to hunt in the real world, which would become a living hell. While the most distracted one seems not to fully follow the conversation, his companion comments that the situation is even worse than he imagined. Suddenly, an armed group appears at the entrance, causing everyone to prepare for battle. The enemy commander approaches and, in a mocking tone, asks why the rats stopped running. Recognizing him, the girl calls him by name and asks him to give up, stating that her father is already dead. Even so, he refuses, accusing the scientist of hiding materials and calling them both traitors who must die. At that moment, the leader intervenes, reminding him that they are players and, unlike him, don't die permanently. Trying to avoid combat, the young man proposes a deal, saying they'll owe a favor if they're set free. However, Rubik calls him naive and reveals he planned to kill them from the start. Finally, he stares at the opponent and states that, with his strength, killing him will make him level up. Faced with the threat, the young man concludes that any kind of negotiation is useless. Without wasting time, the enemy orders his soldiers to open fire on the group. To protect her, the 2 spellcasters raise a magic barrier around their companion. While dodging, the leader realizes he can see the bullets, but can't avoid all of them in quick succession. With that, he decides that to save the girl, they'll have to eliminate the enemy commander first. Determined, he charges forward with a punch ready to strike. In front of him, the opponent smiles confidently, ready for a direct clash. Their fists collide violently, creating a powerful shockwave. Even during the brief standoff, the aggressor keeps his eyes fixed on the target. Right after, he surprises by revealing a hidden blade in his gauntlet. The weapon pierces the attacker's arm, and he screams in pain from the wound. Still, he forces himself to endure, knowing that if he fails, his ally might die. Surprised by his resilience, the enemy quickly retreats, trying to gain distance. Taking advantage of the opening, the fighter lands a devastating kick to the opponent's torso. With the impact, the captain's body is thrown backward, crashing into his own soldiers. At that moment, a wheeled capsule is moved to the center of the room. The young man is startled to see what's about to happen. Then he sees the warrior girl trapped inside the containment capsule, closely guarded by soldiers. The hostile commander asks if the boy is panicking, while the boy demands to know what he's plotting. With a satisfied smile, the man reveals that although he can't kill immortals, he can imprison them, preventing resurrection. Upon hearing this, one of the spellcasters realizes that if it's true, they'll lose their greatest advantage in battle. Acknowledging that he's also taken damage, the captain suggests both sides retreat. He then proposes a trade, the girl in exchange for the other's freedom. Without hesitation, the leader refuses to abandon his companions, earning praise for his loyalty. Faced with the answer, Rubik laments the decision and says he expected more wisdom from him. Then he orders another full-force attack, giving no chance to respond. The young man is struck by a barrage of bullets as he tries to shield himself. Seeing him wounded, the enemy mocks the situation, saying it ended too quickly and was boring. Finally, he gives the order to shoot the woman and finish her off. Meanwhile, Kentaro and Hikaru struggle to maintain a magical barrier around Yura. With difficulty, the former warns he's reaching his limit in sustaining the defense. Right after, the barrier shatters and throws him back from the impact. Desperate, his comrade shouts that all is lost, while the girl watches in worry. Even lying on the ground, the warrior declares it's still too soon to give up. Next, he asks his ally to bring him the spear, saying he has a plan, but the other hesitates in fear. Then, under pressure, the young man agrees to go, terrified by the situation. With that, he runs desperately toward the weapon to retrieve it. Even with bullets flying nearby, he manages to reach the spear on its pedestal. Relieved, he celebrates having completed the task successfully. Immediately, he throws the weapon to his brother while shouting for him. The other catches it mid-air without any trouble. However, the boy who ran is hit by several bullets and falls, screaming in pain. Shortly after, the warrior sees his body at the resurrection point, finding the feeling strange. Disappointed, Rubik complains that the boy chose to die and that the experience points were few. Irritated, he orders his men to fire, eager to see how much XP they can gain. At that moment, a stone wall rises from the ground, blocking the shots. Protected, the girl comments that their firepower is too high and wonders what to do. In response, the fighter tells her to leave it to him as he prepares an attack with his spear. A massive explosion follows the weapon's charge. The impact blasts a large hole in the structure, revealing an escape route. Furious, the enemy shouts, asking what they're planning to do. Then, the spear wielder tells his companion that she can turn into armor to avoid dying, leaving her in shock. Next, he throws her through the hole and asks her to find him later, while the villain screams in rage. At the same time, the other mage is hit by several bullets and collapses to the ground. Rubik announces that he won't kill them, as he plans to capture them to lure the traitor back. With a slight smile on his face, the warrior simply thanks him for the information. The unexpected response leaves the enemy completely confused. Finally, the fighter thanks him for the opportunity to counterattack and strikes him with a powerful kick. The blow sends Rubik crashing to the floor in front of his stunned soldiers. However, Rubik screams in disbelief, asking how the opponent is still able to move after so many bullets, calling him a monster. Right after, the bullets that hit him simply fall to the ground. Then, the warrior rises enveloped in a dark aura with glowing eyes. The scene then flashes back to an earlier moment, with the young man deep in thought in a forest. After taking a deep breath, he seems to make a decision. Suddenly, a wild boar appears in his path. Without hesitation, the fighter charges forward to attack the creature. With a precise kick, he hurls the animal against a tree. Then he turns around with a confident smile. Right after, he grabs the boar's head with his hand. A dark energy seems to be absorbed into his body as a soul screams in agony. With that, a spectral figure manifests behind him, and he wonders what it is. He describes the feeling as a restorative hot spring, sensing an infinite power flowing through him. Extremely satisfied, he declares that it's the best sensation of all. He realizes that as long as his body can endure it, his strength, speed, and recovery will increase rapidly. Reflecting on what he feels, he concludes that his power is almost frightening and decides to keep it as a secret trump card. Back in the present, he positions himself before the enemies and declares that it's time to level up. With that, he advises the soldiers to run, saying he'd feel guilty killing NPCs with emotions. However, Rubik ignores the warning, calls it a bluff, and orders his men to shoot. Then the soldiers obey and fire another barrage of bullets at him. The warrior wonders why they won't listen and whether NPCs have suicidal tendencies. Right after, he dodges the shots and vanishes with a quick movement. Stunned, the enemy yells that he disappeared and orders the guards to find him. Then the fighter reappears beside one of the soldiers and announces a power boost. With a single upward punch, he launches two enemies into the air. Seeing an opening, another rushes in to attack him from behind. However, he swiftly dodges the strike while declaring a speed increase. The attacker is paralyzed with fear upon witnessing his opponent's agility. Suddenly, a chain shoots out from a hidden opening in the floor. The chain wraps around the warrior and traps him, catching him off guard with the ambush. Rubik then mocks him, claiming he can't destroy the entire room, even if he's strong. With a confident smile, the prisoner simply asks why he couldn't do that. Then he unleashes an energy blast that shatters the chains restraining him. Shocked, the villain screams that it's impossible and warns him not to mess with him. Holding the remnants of the chain, the warrior promises to show him what true power it is. Right after, he vanishes, leaving only the metal links behind. Rubik reacts completely stunned by the scene he just witnessed. In disbelief, he steps forward and asks how the opponent managed to break free. While searching for him, the villain is startled by a scream nearby. In an instant, he sees the figure standing over the bodies of the defeated soldiers. With glowing eyes, the fighter stares at him and warns that he'll be next. Suddenly, the enemy seems to understand how it was possible. He realizes that the boy didn't use brute strength but dislocated all his bones to escape. The confirmation comes right after, when the fighter himself says that his healing allows him to fight immediately, even with a broken neck. Next, he charges forward and declares that he's going to kill Rubik and save Himikawa. Completely terrified, The antagonist backs away while calling him a monster. He then runs toward the capsule, trying to escape, but the pursuer gives him no breathing room. To buy time, the fugitive pushes one of his soldiers forward and shouts for them to stop him. Without hesitation, the attacker knocks the guard down with a punch and questions whether he feels no guilt using his men as shield. Rubik replies that he doesn't mind sacrificing others to achieve his goal. Ignoring him, the spear wielder breaks Diana's capsule with a precise punch. With the structure destroyed, the liquid inside spills across the floor. The girl opens her eyes, appearing both frightened and relieved. As soon as she's freed, she hugs her savior and comments that he looks like he got bigger. The boy smiles and suggests that since they can't escape, they should go after experience points. Meanwhile, Rubik flees down ramp, abandoning his soldiers behind. Desperate, he orders the men to keep shooting and kill everyone. Those who remain obey and fire another barrage of bullets. Rubik then sees a resurrection light and wonders if the enemies died from the attack. He then questions his men to find out if anyone gained experience points. One of the soldiers raises his hand and confirms he got the points. However, he reports gaining less experience than expected, questioning the relationship between rank and power. The commander gazes at the horizon, reflecting on the revelation and what Yura discovered. The scene then shifts to the outside of the facility. Back at the resurrection point, the warrior complains of a headache, concluding that dying isn't pleasant. Soon after, he gets up and walks toward the waiting room. As he approaches, he asks Kentaro and Ayana why they look so serious. Kentaro grabs him in a panic, asking if he forgot the divine revelation. He then explains that in 7 days, the bases will attack and the current players won't be able to defend themselves. With that, Kentaro concludes that players who can't level up will start killing. Ayana turns to her companion and asks, incredulously, if he's joking about awakened players in the real world. Kentaro laments that for money, human reason disappears, and that the real world will become hell. While Ayana tries to cheer him up, the boy cries, saying the world will be destroyed. Suddenly, she watches in surprise as he stands up with a determined look. Without warning, the warrior kicks Kentaro away in front of Ayana's shocked gaze. Kentaro hits the wall as the girl screams, begging them to talk it out. Lying on the ground, Kentaro asks through tears if the other plans to kill him. Shugo then calls him pathetic and questions the use of having such a weak heart. Next, he kneels and says there will be another chance, prompting Kentaro to ask for details. While the strategist explains that the players have no chance, Ayana reminds them they can get stronger with the game's equipment. Kentaro then doubts they can grow stronger that easily, since the game feels too real. With that, the leader defines their top priority as quickly increasing their rank and obtaining rare equipment. He reveals that they rescued Yura, and that since she's the daughter of a former leader, she must have supporters. The plan then becomes clear. With Yura's help, they'll get gear and power up at once. Kentaro understands the idea is to find allied players and delay the slaughter at each base. Even so, he worries about the small number of allies, but his brother reminds him he's forgetting someone. Curious, he turns and asks who he's talking about. Shugo then reveals the name Morioka Hikaru, stating that in the real world, nothing is stronger than being rich. Meanwhile, the scene shifts again to a place filled with colorful lights. At the same time, in a nightclub, a crowd was watching a performance on stage. At that moment, a woman asked why Hikaru didn't seem to be having fun. She soon invited him to drink. Next, she tried to pour the drink directly into his mouth. However, a hand smashed the wine glass into her face. Stunned, he shouted, wanting to know who was there. Then Shugo appeared, telling him to pretend he doesn't know them in the real world, which led to him being recognized. Hikaru began to laugh as he pushed a girl aside. Next, he climbed on stage and announced that everyone's drinks were on him. When Shugo's group approached, he asked how they knew they were there, but Shugo simply asked for a private room. In the VIP room, he demanded that the other tell him about himself and Yura. Showing confusion, the boy asked what Shugo meant. In response, the leader grabbed him, questioning how long he intended to keep hiding the truth. He explained that he found it odd that Hikaru had acted for Yura on a difficult mission, since trusting him should have been impossible. He then punched him, saying he needed to understand that this game was abnormal. After that, he revealed that Yura's secret could become dangerous even in the real world. Lying on the ground, he replied that he had no attachment to the real world. Then he recalled how his parents used to call him trash and despised him since childhood. Even when he got into trouble, they acted like he didn't exist. Because of that, he grew up without finding meaning in life, always suspicious of those who approached him only for his money. But everything changed the day he encountered a creature in the forest. At the time, a blue wolf charged at him, growling. Suddenly, Yura appeared and kicked the beast away. The young man watched the scene, completely stunned. Right after, she stepped in front of him and used a light-based spell. As a result, the wolf was thrown to the ground, completely defeated. Hikaru then asked the creature to become his armor, feeling that their hearts were connected. In that moment, he realized he loved Yura and wanted to spend the rest of his life by her side. Back in the present, Shugo interrupted him to ask what the monster had left behind, leaving him confused. So he deduced that to protect his princess, he needed a trump card and kept it a secret. With that, Hikaru admitted he couldn't hide it anymore and revealed a certificate of autonomous zone recognition. Then Kentaro and Ayana were surprised, commenting that it was an item used to build a hideout and that he was lucky. Next, Shugo said he understood his desire to stay in the game, but warned him that the virtual world was becoming increasingly dangerous. After a sigh, Hikaru agreed that he could no longer run away and asked what he should do. In response, Shugo said he should use every possible means to gather as many people as he could. He then smiled with determination, announcing that they would build a base bigger than the survival zone. Shortly after, a ruined building stood out amidst the devastated landscape. There, the group walked through the desolate area toward their objective. Suddenly, Hikaru turned around after sensing a presence approaching. Right after, Yura jumped on his back, happy to have finally found him. While the others looked away, Shugo asked if they could proceed. Gathered together, he explained that in 7 days the great bases would attack the survival zones, which was dangerous for everyone. His plan was to make the natives independent from the 7 great bases, which surprised the girl. She then revealed that since she had been expelled and no longer received revelations, she might be able to help. At that moment, Shugo recalled that her father had been in the forest base and should have allies there. He then asked if she could reach out to them, and Yura said proving her theory could bring good results. With a smile, she assured him she would contact them right away. Meanwhile, at the forest base, a large tower rose among the trees. A guard ran toward his captain at the fortress wall. Upon arriving, he handed him a letter, stating it was from Yura. The captain then began reading the message he received. With a sudden gesture, he crumpled the paper in his hand. Then he drew his sword. With a quick motion, he sliced the letter into pieces in the air. Surprised, the guard asked what Yura had said in the message. The captain then asked if he really thought they stood a chance against the players. With that, the subordinate replied that they die permanently, while players resurrect endlessly. The captain agreed, stating that they were nothing more than pawns to delay the enemy. At last, he looked toward the horizon and concluded that no one wants to die. He revealed a risky plan that could either empower them or wipe them out, and asked if the guard would still follow him. Faced with the loyal and positive response, the captain simply said he understood. With that, he looked toward the fortress and said they couldn't waste any time. Next, he ordered a summons to be sent out to everyone. With a smile, he concluded that this would be a gift for Yura. Outside the forest base, the group was preparing to enter. Then, Kentaro knocked on the large wooden wall. Standing beside Yura and the others, he asked if this was the right place. She confirmed the location using the map, but Hikaru voiced his distrust towards some. Irritated, the girl pulled his ear, explaining that the man was her uncle and the one who raised her. She then said he had separated from her father to join the army, and that she wasn't expecting a reply. Shugo then wanted to know if her uncle was in charge of the entire forest base. Yura denied it, clarifying that he only commanded one of the 12 units since the leader didn't trust him. Impatient, Kentaro got ready to act. Right after, he punched the wall with all his strength. In pain, he backed off, saying the wood felt like iron and questioning how they were supposed to find anyone. That's when Ayana offered to handle it, preparing her weapon as her summon appeared. But Shugo stopped her, saying there must be another method since Selm had pointed them to that spot. Suddenly, an explosion destroyed part of the wall from the inside out. Amid the debris, a guard was thrown out. The man looked at Yura and recognized her as the young lady. Right after, he collapsed at her feet, happy to have finally found her. Awkwardly, she asked who he was and why he was acting like that. He introduced himself as Ken, assistant to Selm, and explained that he hadn't knelt, he just fell from the explosion. Ken then hurried the group, saying the intentional explosion would attract more guards. From a wall, a watchman spotted the group running and shouted that there were intruders. Ken looked back, seeing more guards approaching to pursue them. Shugo asked him how they planned to escape with all that attention. With a confident smile, the assistant simply said it was obvious. Then he raised his arms and shouted that they'd make a frontal assault, leading the charge. Yura brought her hand to her head, complaining about the pain from all the confusion. Shugo tried to calm her, saying the captain's plan should have a chance of success. Suddenly, the group's sprint was abruptly interrupted. They had arrived at a large round structure, and Yura asked if this was the place. Soon, the ship with the number 13 began to approach them. Selm then appeared at the entrance of the ship, welcoming them to his fortress. With an emotional smile, the young woman recognized him as her uncle. She quickly hugged him while he apologized for what happened, saying it must have been hard. Meanwhile, outside, the guards who were chasing them were rapidly approaching. Faced with the threat, Shugo shouted for everyone to take their positions, but he was stopped by a hand gesture. Selm told the group to enter first, assuring them he would handle the situation. Shugo and Kentaro watched as the man stepped forward. The guards then confronted him, asking if he planned to attack Arsenal 13. Selm explained that it used to be his lab before Rubik turned it into an arsenal without permission. At that moment, one of the guards protested, saying he needed the general's authorization and couldn't bring outsiders. With disdain, the scientist dismissed Rubik's authority and announced the withdrawal of the base's 3rd unit. Then he warned them to be ready if they wished to fight. Shocked, the soldiers called him insane and gave the order to open fire. Selm activated his weapon, saying he didn't want to kill them, but couldn't help it if they insisted on dying. With a swift motion, he charged at the guards with his electric weapon. His attack quickly struck one soldier's rifle, who reacted in complete surprise. He then broke another's weapon with a powerful kick. With that, he took down the others in a series of precise strikes. From inside the ship, Shugo watched, impressed by the man's strength, which seemed to rival his own. He then reflected that he had only injured Rubik with a surprise attack and wondered how they would handle others of that level. Meanwhile, all the guards were already down, defeated on the ground. Some told them to return and report to Rubik, warning them not to follow him again. Just as he was about to turn around, he stopped upon noticing something different. Through the ship's window, Shugo saw a massive troop approaching and wondered what it was. From the smoke, an army of giant robots emerged, marching in formation. Faced with the scene, Selm stared at them, saying they had finally arrived. He then gave the order for his soldiers on the ship to open fire. The shots, however, ricocheted off the robots without causing damage. From one of the windows, a soldier shouted desperately that it wasn't working. Shugo then asked what those things were, and the soldier explained they were the crystal robots, the base's secret weapon. Already inside the ship, Selm revealed that each of the 7 bases received the Lord's technology to kill immortals. He then told Yura that he witnessed the birth of the divine place alongside her father. At that moment, he remembered how it all suddenly appeared without warning. Selm recalled trembling, realizing that humans could not defeat a lord with such advanced technology. He explained that even the most powerful beasts were weak compared to them, and that he couldn't keep his composure. He confessed that the power was immense, and that he only realized his mistake when Yura's father was killed. With that, he bowed in regret, offering his sincere apologies to the young woman. Shugo cursed the Lord for making them fight and questioned whether they could escape that military force. Outside, the army of robots continued advancing relentlessly. Selm shouted, shocked, that the robots now had cannons and that the upgrades were happening too quickly. At the base's tower, the general wondered whether they could really modify what the Lord had given them so easily. Soon, Rubik declared that with the next evolution, they would become true killing machines. With a laugh, he said that the immortals were nothing more than nutrients to walk alongside the Lord. Next, one of the robots fired a powerful energy beam. The attack struck the ship directly, causing a series of explosions on the hull. Desperate, Kentaro shouted, asking what they should do. Shugo then called for Ayana, who promptly responded to his command. With that, she materialized an energy weapon in her hand. She then fired, and her projectiles destroyed one of the robots. The enemy exploded into several pieces from the impact of the attack. Satisfied, Shugo celebrated that the counterattack was working. Soon after, the cargo bay door of the ship opened. From inside, an army of allied robots emerged, ready for battle. Looking at the troops on the ground, he considered them naive. Rubik warned them not to underestimate the Lord, as the base would generate robots endlessly. With that, Kentaro panicked upon seeing the enemies multiply, but Shugo told him to calm down. He then looked to the side, concerned about what Selm would do. Meanwhile, Selm was running hurriedly through a corridor of the ship. He then kicked down a door with force. Upon reaching the cockpit, he revealed that his trump card was the first-generation flying saucer. Sitting in the pilot's seat, he said he was counting on the ship so they could act together. With determination, he declared they would uncover the truth about the Lord. Soon after, he activated the ship's controls with a shout. The ship then began to move, floating above the battlefield. Inside Arsenal 13, Ken and his soldiers found the sudden silence strange. Outside, the entire ship lifted off, flying over the ruins of the city. The guards on the ground reacted in shock, asking if the arsenal had flown. Suddenly, the wine glass was shattered. In the tower, Rubik watched the escape, accusing someone of hiding the new flying saucer that was supposedly a failure. The soldiers on the ground could only watch the ship fly toward the moon. Punching the glass, Rubik raged at the stolen technology from the forest base. He then shouted that he would not let Selm escape with his technology no matter what. Elsewhere, an abandoned building stood out in the night. Nearby, a group of people worked to build a new base. Selm's ship then appeared in the sky, startling the people on the ground. Soon after, the flying saucer landed in a clearing in the forest. Shugo's group descended the ramp of the ship as soon as it landed. With the impact, Shugo stumbled and fell to the ground. Sitting down, he said with relief that he thought he was going to die. Selm then informed Hikaru that the saucer was damaged, but repairable. He then said it was time to fulfill the promise, and Hikaru agreed. He soon explained that he would use the certificate to transfer authority over the base, but couldn't guarantee success. He showed the emblem on his arm, explaining that only the base's master could expel someone with it. Finally, he warned that if they failed, they would be seen as enemies and killed so Yura could be taken. Kentaro then asked if failure would mean they were triggering the war early. While fearing for his life, Shugo reassured him that nothing begins with fear. He then promised Selm that he wouldn't let them suffer any losses. Soon, he encouraged the group to begin, but Hikaru felt immense pressure. With that, he held the golden certificate firmly. He then activated the recognition certificate, unleashing a powerful golden light. The golden power enveloped Hikaru as the others watched the certificate's activation. Afterward, he asked in confusion if anything had changed in the area. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a new structure began to emerge from the earth. Large stone blocks rapidly rose from the ground. In moments, a complete fortress had formed before the group. Shugo then took a deep breath, preparing to test the wall. He then delivered a powerful kick against the castle's wall. The impact stirred up dust, but didn't cause any damage to the structure. With that, he confirmed that the durability was sufficient, despite the pain in his foot. At the same time, Selm noticed in shock that the emblem on his arm had vanished. His gaze grew firm with determination as he realized what had happened. Hikaru then joyfully celebrated, realizing he was now the lord of the castle. When Shugo asked about changes, he showed the new lord panel and the daily resources. He soon explained that he could strengthen the castle with resources and create missions to obtain rare items. Kentaro then said that while others completed missions, it was finally his time to shine with his money. Selm explained that the saucer had weapons to form a squad, and that they were now citizens of the new base. He then requested a secure lab, promising to support his new allies with everything he had. Shugo then whispered a plan into Hikaru's ear. With a confident smile, he replied that they could leave it to him. Soon after, he called Yura and ran off hand in hand with her through the forest. While watching them, Ayane asked Shugo if they could really trust Hikaru. He replied that even though he hadn't known him for long, he felt Hikaru was trustworthy. Then he assured her that he would risk his life to fulfill promises and asked Ayane to stay by their side. Soon, an announcement declared that the first castle of the Morioka group had been built, offering rewards. With that, Hikaru and Yura began recruiting new members, announcing quests and a new way to play. Selm watched the scene from a distance with his guards. At his side, Ken commented that the idea was smart, and he agreed that he had been too disinterested until then. Selm then reflected that despite the fear, leading the base opened up new opportunities to carry on his friend's dream. Nearby, two newcomers observed the scene, one of them wondering if that was a new chapter. The other, however, pointed at Hikaru and called him a rich idiot before deciding to head over there. A player ran toward the recruitment shouting that with money, everything worked out. Suddenly, an explosion of energy hit the ground right in front of the group. The players staggered back, stunned, not understanding what had just happened. Moments later, a high-heeled boot stomped firmly on the ground. Charlotte appeared, scolding them for leaving the survival zone without informing her. With her eyes glowing red, she asked if they were mocking her. Faced with this, the players backed away, terrified by the woman's frightening presence. One of them tried to explain, saying they weren't leaving permanently. Charlotte explained that her permission was required and that she was in a bad mood. With that, she used her whip to bind the player who had complained. Then she punished another, stating that this is what happens to those who betray her. After that, she asked what the others would do, reminding them they couldn't escape the pain of death. With a sinister smile, she invited them to experience the pleasure of dying. Terrified, the players screamed that they would return to the base immediately. The administrator then watched with satisfaction as they fled. Shugo compared the woman to an abusive boss, and she challenged him, asserting her authority to make the rules. She then offered the option of killing her so the obstacle would disappear. Shugo dismissed the idea due to the power gap, but reminded her that every game has rules for completing missions in exchange for rewards. With that, he said that as an administrator, she also had to follow that rule, leaving her momentarily confused. Shugo then turned to Hikaru, saying it was his turn, and he accepted the task confidently. Next, the new lord used his authority to create a new quest. The mission was to stop the administrator for 10 minutes to recruit allies in exchange for epic weapons. Shugo's group prepared to accept the quest on their panels. As soon as they accepted it, the three unleashed power toward their opponent. Shugo realized that the authority of a castle lord to create missions seemed to be greater. With a smile, Charlotte praised him, calling him a clever man. Then she asked if he really thought using the rules against her would work. Inside a protective barrier, Shugo admitted they couldn't win, but they could hold her for 10 minutes. Hikaru hurried the players, reminding them they had only 10 minutes to earn the rewards. While one player got excited about the opportunity, another refused to go, afraid of the danger. Charlotte then noted that although she couldn't break the rules, only the three of them had accepted the mission. With that, she threatened to kill the other players to make the quest fail, promising to get them one by one.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.